Hello and welcome back to the English Pulse. I am your host, James. And if you are joining us for the first time, you have definitely come to the right place. We are a little different from your standard language lesson. We aren't here to drill grammar tables or memorize lists of random words.
No, definitely not. I'm Chloe, and we are here to do something much more interesting. We are here to discuss the world's most pressing issues and complex social ideas. We really believe that to master a language, you have to do more than just speak it. You have to understand the culture, the debates, and the psychology that actually drive the conversation.
That is exactly our goal. We want to bring you thoughtful discussions on human psychology and current events, and then pair them with what we call topic-based vocabulary. These are the specific phrases and idioms that native speakers use in real-world debates. So by the end of this session, you won't just be informed, you will be fluent in the topic.
And today's topic is a giant one. It is a subject that has sparked arguments at dinner tables and in boardrooms for well over a decade now. But before we even open the source material, I have to ask you, and I want our listeners to think about this too, is it really as simple as leaning in? Or is the system designed to keep us out?
Wow. Yeah, that is the big question. That is the tension that defines the last 15 years of corporate culture.
Yeah.
You have one side saying Sheryl Sandberg is right, we have to change ourselves first.
Yeah.
And then you have the critics saying, no, the workplace itself is broken, so don't fix the worker, fix the system.
It is the classic individual versus the institution debate. And today we are looking at this through a very specific lens. We are taking a deep dive into a 2026 analysis of Sheryl Sandberg's 2013 bestseller, Lean In.
Now, this book is over a decade old. It was published way back in 2013 by the former COO of Facebook. And our source material today poses a very direct question. Should you read it in 2026? I mean, the world has changed so much. We have AI, we have remote work, the economy looks completely different.
It is a totally fair question. But the analysis suggests that while the book isn't perfect, the psychological concepts it introduced are still essentially the operating system of the corporate world. If you don't understand these terms, you are basically missing half the conversation.
So here is our roadmap for today. We are going to explore 5 key lessons from the analysis and the essential vocabulary you need to talk about modern careers. Coming up, we will give you the phrases to identify imposter syndrome. We will explain why your career is actually a jungle gym and not a ladder. And we will discuss the invisible weight of the mental load at home.
Plus, we will tackle the controversial advice about when you should and maybe shouldn't plan your exit from the workforce. It's a concept called don't leave before you leave.
Let's get right into it. The first concept we need to unpack is something that, honestly, I think most people watching have felt at some point. It is from Chapter 2 of the book called Sit at the Table.
This chapter addresses what Sandberg calls the leadership ambition gap. The core idea here is that women are often socialized from a very young age to be liked, not to lead. We are taught to be communal and cooperative, while boys are often taught to be assertive.
And that socialization creates a real barrier. The source material quotes Sandberg saying we hold ourselves back in ways both big and small by lacking self-confidence, by not raising our hands. It is an internal struggle.
And this leads us to a specific data point from the analysis that honestly floors me every single time I see it. It is about job applications. Listen to this. Men tend to apply for jobs when they meet only 60% of the criteria.
60%.
Yeah.
That is barely half. They look at the job description and just think, I could do half of this. I will figure the rest out later.
Right, whereas women, the data shows they tend to wait until they meet 100% of the criteria before they even hit apply. They feel they need to be perfect just to get an interview.
That is a massive difference in how we perceive our own readiness. And from a business perspective, it is a huge inefficiency in the market. You have incredible talent just sitting on the sidelines because they don't check one tiny box.
It is a psychological trap. And actually, I want to pause here and break the fourth wall for a second. I want to talk directly to you listening right now. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever held back from applying for a role because you didn't check every single box? Or maybe you sat in a meeting and had a great idea, but you didn't say it out loud because you weren't entirely sure it was perfect.
I think we have all been there at some point. And that feeling actually has a name. This brings us to our first major vocabulary alert. The term for this feeling is imposter syndrome.
Yes, imposter syndrome is that internal nagging feeling that you are a fraud despite your actual success. It is thinking, I don't really belong here, and sooner or later, everyone's going to find out that I don't know what I'm doing.
Associated with that is our next term, the confidence gap. This refers to the disparity, the difference in self-assurance between men and women, exactly like we saw in that 60 versus 100% job application statistic.
And one more phrase here is internalizing failure. This happens when you blame yourself for a setback rather than looking at external factors. The analysis points out that women are much more likely to internalize failure thinking I just wasn't good enough, whereas men might say the test was too hard or the market was down.
So the takeaway from this section is pretty clear. The message is don't wait for permission to lead. Take your seat at the table. Because if you wait until you feel 100% ready, you're going to be waiting forever.
Absolutely. Now let's move to the second lesson, which completely reimagines how we view our career paths. This is chapter 4, and it uses a metaphor that is somehow even more relevant in 2026 than it was back in 2013.
You're talking about the jungle gym.
Yes, the jungle gym versus the ladder. See, the traditional view of a career is a ladder. You start at the very bottom and you climb up rung by rung. It is incredibly rigid.
It is rigid. And on the ladder, you can only do two things right. You can move up or you can fall off. And usually you are just staring at the heels of the person directly above you. There's no real view.
But a jungle gym offers options. You can move up, sure, but you can also move sideways. You can even move down to get better footing and then climb up a completely different side.
Our source material emphasizes that in 2026, this concept is absolutely crucial. Think about the job market today. With AI, with automation, and the gig economy, entire industries are changing overnight. The whole idea of a straight 40-year climb in one single company is basically extinct.
Exactly. If you stick to a ladder in a world that is changing this fast, you might get to the top and realize the wall isn't even there anymore. The jungle gym approach reduces the pressure on women who feel they have fallen behind because of life choices. It rebrands a nonlinear career as exploratory rather than a failure. It encourages skill building over just title chasing.
And this brings us to another vocabulary alert with some essential business English. The first term here is lateral move.
A lateral move is when you move to a new position that is at the exact same level as your current one, usually to learn new skills or change departments, rather than moving up in seniority immediately. In the old days, people thought this was a step backward. But in the jungle gym, it is a calculated strategy.
Next is career trajectory. This simply means the path your career takes over time, the arc of your professional life.
And finally, nonlinear. This describes a path that isn't a straight line. It is unpredictable. It might loop back. It might go sideways, but it is still moving forward.
So if you were listening to this and feeling stuck because you aren't climbing the ladder fast enough, just remember, it is a jungle gym. Swinging sideways to learn something new is still progress.
But there is a danger in the jungle gym, too. If you are trying to swing from bar to bar and you're trying to do it perfectly without ever slipping or getting tired, you're eventually going to crash.
Which ties perfectly into our next segment. Because if you try to be perfect at everything, you end up doing nothing well.
This is based on Chapter 9, The Myth of Doing It All. This addresses what we call the superwoman complex, or the maternal wall.
The superwoman. That is the intense pressure to be the flawless, successful executive from 9 to 5, and then magically transform into the perfect, nurturing parent who bakes cookies from scratch and never ever forgets a dentist appointment.
It honestly sounds exhausting just hearing you say it. The book argues that trying to do it all leads to inevitable failure. You literally cannot be in two places at once.
So what is the solution then? The source gives us a very liberating phrase, and I think this should be the motto for anyone working today. Done is better than perfect.
Done is better than perfect. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is staying in the game without crashing. It is about giving yourself permission to be just good enough in order to move forward.
And if you don't accept that, you run straight into our next vocabulary alert, which features a very serious term, burnout.
Burnout is no joke. It is a state of physical, emotional, and mental collapse caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It is not just being tired from a long week, it is being completely empty.
And often, a major cause of burnout is our next term, perfectionism paralysis.
This is when you are unable to start a task or unable to finish it because you are so incredibly afraid it won't be perfect. You just get frozen in place.
To fight that paralysis, you need the final term for this segment, prioritization.
Prioritization is the active skill of deciding what is most important right now and deliberately deciding what you are not going to do. And that is the hard part, isn't it? Saying no to things.
It is incredibly hard. But let's take a quick pause right here. I want to check in with you, our listener. How are you finding this lesson so far?
We are halfway through analyzing these terms that have really shaped corporate culture.
We know it is a lot of psychology to take in,
Yeah.
but these concepts, imposter syndrome, the jungle gym burnout, these are the building blocks of modern conversations about work and society.
And we're definitely not done yet. We still have two major points left to cover today. We are going to talk about a phenomenon called leaving before you leave, which is all about how you time your career choices. Right. And we also have to discuss the chapter that gets really personal, which is making your partner a real partner. That one is a bit controversial, but absolutely essential.
So let's get back into it. Segment 4 covers Chapter 7. Don't leave before you leave. This is a fascinating psychological phenomenon that affects a lot of ambitious women.
It really does. This addresses women who have big career goals, but they start worrying about work-life balance years before they even have a family. They literally start planning for a crisis that hasn't even happened yet.
The source explains that women often stop taking promotions or stop raising their hands for big challenging projects simply because they're preparing to be busy with children in the future, maybe 2 or 3 years in the future.
They start pulling back to make room for a baby that doesn't exist yet. They think, well, I shouldn't take this heavy management role because I might want to get pregnant in a couple of years and I will need the time.
And the advice from the book is the exact opposite of that instinct. The message is, keep your foot on the gas pedal until the very day you actually need to step away.
The logic makes a lot of sense when you break it down. If you step back 3 years early by the time you actually have a child, you have been stagnating in a job you have completely outgrown. You are bored. And let's be real, it is much, much harder to leave your new baby at home to go to a boring job than it is to go to a job that challenges and excites you.
That is such a crucial perspective. You want to have a compelling professional reason to come back to work. If your job is uninspiring, staying home just becomes the only attractive option by default.
Exactly. So we have another vocabulary alert here with two key terms for this specific mindset. The first is leaning out.
Leaning out is obviously the direct opposite of leaning in. It means withdrawing your effort, your ambition, or your engagement, usually in anticipation of future constraints.
And the second term is future-proofing. Now, normally this is a positive business term, meaning you are preparing a product or strategy for the future. But in this specific context, the source uses it to describe a mistake. It is trying to anticipate the future to a fault.
So the lesson is, don't future-proof yourself out of a great career. Stay engaged until you actually have to make the choice to leave.
But we really have to talk about the other side of the coin now. We have talked a lot about work, but Sandberg argues you cannot succeed at work if you are drowning at home.
Which brings us to segment 5, making your partner a real partner.
This is chapter 8. The core argument here is that women's issues in the workplace are actually family issues. You simply cannot have equality in the boardroom if you do not have equality in the living room.
The source actually quotes a really famous line from the book on this topic. It says, a truly equal world would be one where women ran half our countries and companies and men ran half our homes.
It is a powerful image. And the reality the book points out is that success in the office often depends on a true 50-50 split of chores and childcare. If the woman is doing the 9-to-5 job and then coming home to do all the cooking and cleaning, she is basically working 2 full-time jobs.
And this brings us to a very important distinction in our next vocabulary alert. We all know the word housework, but a more academic and comprehensive term used in these debates is domestic labor.
Yes, domestic labor. That covers all the physical housework and the physical childcare. But there is a much more subtle layer to this that the book highlighted, and this specific term has become absolutely huge in the last few years. The mental load.
The mental load. Can you break that down for us?
Okay, so the mental load is the invisible underlying work of managing a household. It is not just doing the laundry. It is remembering that the laundry needs to be done today because someone needs a specific shirt tomorrow. It is knowing that the kids need new shoes before the school year starts. It is the planning, the organizing, and the constant worrying.
Right, so if you ask your partner to do the dishes, and they do them, they are performing the domestic labor. But you still carry the mental load because you had to monitor the situation and assign the task.
Precisely. You had to be the project manager of the house. And that load almost always falls disproportionately on women. So making your partner a real partner means sharing that mental project management, not just helping out when you are explicitly asked.
Now, we are looking at this book through the lens of 2026, and our source material does offer a significant critique of the original text. It asks what is missing from this conversation today.
Right, because while Lean In definitely started a fire back in 2013, the conversation has evolved significantly. The source material points out that the book had some major blind spots.
What are the main criticisms that the analysis brings up?
Well, the biggest one is the lack of intersectionality. The original book was written by a very wealthy white executive. Critics argue that it didn't really address the unique experiences of women of color, single moms, or those who are just struggling with basic economic survival.
It focused heavily on individual ambition, on the idea that you just need to try harder or change your mindset, and it sort of missed the broader systemic issues.
Exactly. Things like the severe lack of affordable childcare or systemic workplace discrimination. You can lean in all you want, but if childcare costs more than your actual salary, you have a math problem, not a confidence problem.
That is the real 2026 reality check. As always, we want to report on all sides of the source material impartially. The critics make a strong case that structural changes are just as important as individual mindset shifts.
So I want to ask our listeners one more direct question. Does individual ambition fix systemic problems? Or do we fundamentally need both? Can you really lean in your way out of a broken system?
That is a fantastic, provocative thought for everyone to mull over on their own. It's clearly not a simple either-or situation,
Yeah,
but we definitely need to look at the entire picture.
we certainly do.
Well, we are reaching the end of our discussion today, but we don't want you to just listen and then forget everything we talked about. We want you to actively apply this.
That is right. We have a small interactive task, a little bit of homework for you this week. I want you to identify one specific area in your life where you are leaning out or where you are suffering from perfectionism paralysis.
Just one single area. Maybe you are putting off starting a new project because you are worried it won't be perfect. Or maybe you are not speaking up in a team meeting because you don't feel 100% ready.
Write it down, acknowledge it, and then decide on one small action you can take instead. Just remember the phrase, done is better than perfect.
Excellent advice. And before we go, let's do a quick rapid-fire review of those key vocabulary terms we covered today. These are the words you really need to know to engage in this topic.
Okay, let's run through them. Imposter syndrome, that is feeling like a fraud despite your actual success. The jungle gym, the idea that your career path is nonlinear and that is perfectly okay. Burnout, which is the emotional and physical collapse from overwork. And the mental load, the invisible project management of a life and a home.
Fantastic. These are phrases you will hear constantly in English-speaking professional environments. Master them, and you will feel much more confident joining the conversation yourself.
We really hope this discussion gave you some new perspectives on your own career and the exact language you need to describe it.
As always, thank you so much for listening. Be informed, be fluent, and keep feeling the pulse. See you next time.
See you next time.